as Republicans, as Democrats, as Greens, Libertarians, Independents. They're running in record numbers. A century ago, almost none were running. They weren't even voting. No other organization has advocated longer or more vigorously for women's involvement. So, a political centennial, a multi-partisan observance next on Arkansas Week.
Local broadcast of Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the award-winning Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Arkansas's largest major newspaper, bringing you local, national, and international news since 1819. By the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. Yeah, maybe we're a little ahead of ourselves. The Centennial of the League of Women Voters won't roll around, after all, for another 2 years. And what a coincidence that its founding coincides with adoption of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, guaranteeing every American woman what only a handful of states already had extended, the ballot. Anyway, the Arkansas chapter of the League is getting a head start, and why not? Hot off the presses, the 10th edition of the League's Guide to Government in Arkansas. So what better time to unveil that and to talk about how Arkansas women of every political persuasion are seeking public office, shaping public policy. Joining us, members of the League of Women Voters of Arkansas. Beth Barham is Vice President of the League's Washington County chapter and a member of the state leadership team, as is Denise Ennett, who is chair of voter registration for the Pulaski County branch, and also from Washington County, Bonnie Miller, who is chair of voter services and diversity. To all three of you, thanks very much, and thank you for coming aboard. Quite a 98 years it's been. In fact, quite a 200 years it's been, or longer. I dug up a little something. The first woman known to have voted in the United States of America, not from Arkansas but Massachusetts, was one Lydia Taft. It was 1756, and she voted successfully in something akin to a township election. About 120, things didn't get better. In 1872, one Susan B. Anthony was arrested, charged with voting, and convicted. You didn't get a lot of help from the courts. It took women to get to where we are today. Beth.
Well, sometimes social change can be that way. You know, you're changing people's norms, their expectations about how things are supposed to be. But with more education, more experience in the world, I think women were increasingly ready to participate in politics and found they had to make their voice heard themselves.
And hot off the presses, as we mentioned, the aggregate of so much of what you are learned is now in the League's Guide to Government in Arkansas, the 10th edition.
10th edition. It is hot off the press, and this book was first produced in 1976. It's an excellent reference book. It's used as a textbook for classes in high school and colleges and universities in the state. There's really not anything quite like it. It covers information about all the departments of our government, how the judiciary functions, all the aspects of how public power is exercised through the government in Arkansas.
Basically, it's a nuts and bolts, it's the mechanics of government in Arkansas.
Yes, but there's more than that too. There's quite a nice chapter on history, the history in Arkansas of government and people's participation in it. This time around, the book has been quite expanded. We benefited from a beautiful introduction, Steve, that you contributed to the book. We were very pleased to have. And
you could have done better.
No, I don't think so. We're very pleased with it. And then we also have a very nice chapter.
I don't get royalties, I should add. Quickly, go ahead.
We have a very nice chapter that was contributed by Tom Dillard about going more into suffrage in Arkansas specifically. And then in the history section, we've done a lot more work to incorporate the immigration history of the state as that becomes more and more of an issue in the state and nationally for people to understand the populations that are here, that are voting, and where those different streams of our population came from. So all of those changes and improvements have been made, and of course the lead editors on this edition, as the past also, are Doug and Margaret Reed at Ouachita Baptist University, and they worked tirelessly on this. It would have been lovely to have one or the other on the show, but they're both incredibly busy with their jobs at Ouachita Baptist. So.
Well, we're grateful that you three could make time. But the book aside, what we are seeing a year of the woman that we have rarely seen in American government politics, ever. And women are seeking office, and if very recent history is indicating, they're winning, at a minimum, the nominations of their parties.
Mm-hmm. We do. In the state of Arkansas, we have 45 women running for a state legislature. And in 2016, we had 29 women running. So that you can see that that's a huge bump. It's a huge increase in women candidates. And there's a lot of social science research out there, talks about why is this bump, what's causing this increase. And earlier research had talked about there being a gender gap in ambition, so women don't experience the same concerted cultivation as young women growing up that young men do. So they're less inclined to seek political office. But recent research that's come out, and I think is very encouraging and might explain this surge in women candidates, recently has shown that social support structures play more of an important role in women's decision to seek political office than self-initiated candidacy. So what that means is we're seeing a lot of groups recruiting women as never before. We're having political parties recruit, we're having organizations like the League work with women to identify leaders in the community, and just more women in general. If they see women out in the community who they think would make good leaders, good politicians, we're pushing them to go out there and to run. And we're seeing a lot more recruitment, and it's really important. And so it's really important to the work of the League also, that we are always looking to women and developing them and pushing them out there, because we are so underrepresented in our state, especially. We are very underrepresented.
As a matter of fact, we can take a look at least in the Arkansas General Assembly, we've got some numbers I think that we can throw up there. No one would argue, or no one would dare argue, that women are overrepresented in Arkansas government and politics, but we're 4 or 5 percentage points, I think, below the national average in terms of female membership in the state governing body.
We make up 19.3% of the state legislature, which is sad, not even a quarter. So it's if all of our female candidates running right now, if they were to win, our representation would increase from 19.3% to 33.3%.
Can you point to anyone that has stirred in the last 2, 4, 6 years this intensified interest among women in becoming candidates of either party, any party?
I like to say maybe the Me Too movement really have stirred up people, getting them geared to run for political office. Because for so long our voices have been silenced, and I think that and other things has helped women along the way.
Beth?
I like to think also there is, and I think you can see it across the board, men and women candidates, there's a generational shift starting to happen. And I think younger people just don't have the same attitudes about the disenfranchisement of women, not just in the voting and political arena, but in the work arena. So I think issues like equal pay for women, issues like family leave for men and women, all sorts of issues that would have been a harder sell, if you will, in the past are becoming, I think, easier as I see the culture shifting more to be much more embracing of those ideas.
But it's still an uphill. How steep is the grade? Now, it's not, I don't think anybody would argue that the grade is quite as steep as it was for women, say, even 10 years ago, certainly not 20, 30 years ago. But how steep is it? Do women candidates, in your estimation, still have the gender obstacle to deal with as a primary issue? Anyone?
Yes, I agree. Because normally when a guy wants to run for office, hey, you should do it, do it, and they go and do it. And when you approach a female, then they have to say, oh, well, I'm a mother, I have to take care of my kids, I don't have any experience. But for a guy, it's easier to convince a guy to run. And with women, it's kind of like, oh, well, not me, I don't have any experience. And men might not have experience either, but they take the plunge and they do so. And I think we have a lot of wonderful organizations out that are really pushing women to run for office.
Okay, Bonnie?
I think women still face an extreme amount of challenges when it comes to running for office. We face so many more challenges. We do, even women work full time, and we still take on more of the work in the home. We're raising children. We're doing more of the emotional labor in our homes and in our communities. It is more difficult for women to raise money. People are more likely to donate to male candidates, than to women. And when women do get donations, they're smaller. So it's just more difficult. There are so many challenges. And when we're talking about women, the challenges, it's even more difficult for women of color to run for office. So even within women, we see those nuances within that group, and the extraordinary feats that women of color have to overcome to run and become successful candidates. Interesting
in that women got absolutely no help from the U.S. Supreme Court. It literally took the 19th Amendment. Appeal after appeal after appeal went to the U.S. Supreme Court and went absolutely nowhere until the 19th. But this as well. From, say, Reconstruction until the first couple of decades of the 20th century, about, a 60-year period there, the ballot was open ostensibly to all men, and absolutely, including men of color, and no women, regardless of any color, anything, regardless.
Of anything, yeah. It's a very important piece of our history in America, and I guess if there's anything that animates a lot of league leaders, it's to make sure that the younger women coming along understand where they come from, that they know some of that history, because it wasn't just the court's involvement and effort after effort to get the vote. There was actual physical repression, women thrown into jails, beaten, physically abused for protesting, just to ask for the vote, just to be able to vote. And so when younger women don't know that history, and you do, speaking as an older woman, I would say it's kind of painful. It's like you need to understand the value of what you have. And so we are hopeful, things that are in our book, other things that we'll be doing for our 2020 campaign, celebrating that. What people need to understand about the League is we're one of the oldest, most respected organizations in the United States. It was actually the suffragists who got the 19th Amendment passed that formed the League. That's where we come from. So
interesting as well in reading some suffrage history that much of the opposition, a substantial part of the opposition, so rigid were gender roles and stereotypes 100, 150 years ago that a great deal of opposition to suffrage came from other women. They fought it. Saw the ballot box as a threat to their role.
It's really interesting also when you look at the statistics that show that women vote in higher numbers than men consistently since 1964, we have voted in higher rates than men. And yet, our representation is still so small in our government. So there is something there, to look at. And women are not a homogenous group. We're not always on the same page. And so I think an organization like the League is really important because we are nonpartisan and we bring women of different political parties together, and we move forward on policy issues. So.
Yeah, and Bonnie mentioned, Denise, that the imperative from one perspective of engaging women of color, not only as candidates, but to have a greater voice in public policy. What's the League doing?
Well, so I am over the voter registration for our league in Pulaski County. And so one of my tasks is to go to different events and register voters. Again, we are a nonpartisan group. So when I go and register voters, we try to educate them on how to fill out the registration, when early voting occurs, and where to go and vote during primary or general election. It's very important that we reach everybody who's eligible to vote. And recently, this last spring, we were at some high schools in the Pulaski County area, North Little Rock, Pulaski County School District, and we went into the high schools and we registered high school voters that were eligible to vote for the primaries. We think that's important because we are engaging the youth, we engage in all walks of life, and that was a very great highlight to do that.
Women are a target audience or target group in several categories for every candidate nowadays. You have not just soccer moms, but professional women, millennial women. I've seen in some exit polls a category for grandmothers with multiple. And clearly they are the defining, if only because their turnout among women tends to be at least as large, if not larger, than eligible males. So where from here? I mean, if women are already dominant at the ballot box, if only in sheer numbers, not ideology, where from here?
We need
Bonnie?
more candidates to run. We need more women candidates to run for office. We are seeing a surge in women candidates this year, but it's still not enough. We need to increase those numbers. Every year we need to be developing women and making them ready to run.
And I think we have to, really, as Denise was saying, reach out to the youth and to younger generations for them to become interested in the policy issues of our day. And that's what we see with this surge of interest among younger people in politics now that's noted all over the country. We have a lot of women coming to the League who are saying, I see that I'm ready to be politically active in terms of being informed about the issues. And that is exactly what we provide, and I think a pretty unique forum for it, because as we've been saying, we're nonpartisan. What that means for the League, we never support parties, we never support candidates. We never take sides in that way. On the other hand, we do study issues that our members care about, that they bring forward. It's very member-driven. And so once we have decided we're going to work on these issues in this year, we will have public forums, we'll have debates, we'll read materials about that, we'll have discussions, and then if we feel that we're ready for it, we'll take a vote. And if we have a vote on a position on an issue, then we cross over into, we have sort of two sides of the League. One that's a C3 nonprofit, meaning it's just strictly public service education, and another side that's C4, which means we can advocate on issues. And that's what we do. We don't say, oh, this candidate we like or that party we like. We say, where are you on this issue? Our group has a position on this issue. So candidates, I think if they want to reach people who are active in the League, it would behoove them to look online and see the positions we've taken at the local level, at the state level, and at the national level, because the League is organized across the country. There are leagues in every state, and they have an office in Washington, D.C., and we have positions at all of those levels. The ones at the local level tend to be much more local issues, obviously. But nationally, if they want to see what the positions are, they're all available online.
I'm just trying to think of some markers here. To the east of us in Tennessee, a woman is the Republican nominee for the United States Senate. To the north of us in Missouri, a woman is now the third term, I think, U.S. Senator, Democrat from Missouri. To the west of us in Oklahoma, a Republican woman is the governor. And to the south of, directly to the south of us in Louisiana, has had anyway, a U.S. Senator who is a Democrat. So, can we say then that the roles or gender bias, if not eliminated, has certainly been ameliorated anyway by the talents and the skills of the women who ran? Is that what it boils down to these days?
You're surrounded.
Yeah.
No, I think probably.
Well, we have
Yeah.
we have a woman attorney general, a Republican in Arkansas.
We do. We have 7 elected executive offices in the state, but women only occupy 2 of those seats. So that is not gender parity to me.
Right. But I do think having those candidates and having women in office helps men see this can work. You know, I'm comfortable working with them, I understand them, we get along, we work across party boundaries. Women can be extremely effective. And so I think the more experience and exposure women have in those offices, it's only going to be to the good in terms of future women candidates and their opportunities. So.
Yeah, Denise?
I'd like to mention some of the issues that we have talked about recently. We had Barry Haas come in. He spoke about the Buffalo River and the hog farm controversy. We also had Annabelle Tuck. She came in and she spoke about the Ballot One initiative. We are against the voter ID law that's pending. It's still pending. We believe that that's a suppression of votes for minorities and elderly people. And also, we are hosting some candidate forums for the mayor race in Little Rock. We are working with the Central Arkansas Library System and KUAR and AAUW, which I'm a member of also. And we're going to have several forums throughout the city talking about various subjects. So we try our best to inform our citizens, and we try to make them aware of what's going on so when they go to the ballots, they know for sure how to vote without us telling them how to vote.
Mostly vote.
Vote, yes. Mostly vote, yes.
Bonnie Miller.
So going back to, it is nice that we have more women candidates running. And going back to that number, the 19.3% that women make up in the state of Arkansas in the legislature, 3% of those women are women of color. 3%. In no way is that acceptable. In no way is that representative of our population. And so that's definitely something that we need to be working on, is recruiting more women of color to run for office.
Well, as the league approaches its official one, it's Centennial in a couple of years. I was going to ask, what are the remaining big objectives of the league in 2 years when it turns 100? What do you want to be able to look back and say, we did it?
If you're referring to Arkansas, it can be pretty specific because some of that is organized around our book. Because we are very aware that we have got to get out and do more to engage with young people at the high school and college level, and young people who may not be attending college. And so we want to take this book, which we've improved quite a bit, but turn it into a more interactive electronic document with a lot more color, a lot more graphics, and a lot more engagement of people to understand the issues. So I think for us, reaching 2020, our major goal is civic education and encouraging people, helping people be motivated to vote. So to the extent we can help them understand their government and what's at stake, they're going to start voting, and that's what we want. And I think there couldn't be a more timely moment to have this book, because the governor's talking about reorganizing the government, and there's going to be a big discussion about that in the state. People need to know, what is the government now?
3 representatives, wonderful representatives of the League of Women Voters, 2 years ahead of time. Happy birthday to the League, and thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
I'm not sure what birthday Arkansas Week is getting ready to celebrate, but there is this big important change. And we'll remind you that on the first Friday of October, October 5th, I believe that is, big change for us, from 7:30 on Friday nights to 6:30. See you then, next week.
Local broadcast of Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the award-winning Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Arkansas's largest major newspaper, bringing you local, national, and international news since 1819. By the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.